So we've spent the last few lessons really looking at different models on how we can multiply fractions and whole numbers. And so today we're going to be multiplying fractions and whole numbers by rewriting the whole number over 1, multiplying the numerators together, multiplying the denominators together, and then simplifying fractions. And so if we take a look at our first problem, it says Julie has 10 yards of ribbon. She divides the ribbon into 3 equal pieces and uses 2 of the pieces on the gifts. How much ribbon does she use? Solve this problem any way you choose. So we can go ahead and divide it into pieces by using models, but I'm going to go ahead and start working on that learning target and just rewriting the whole number. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set up the problem. And so if I'm using 2 of the 3 pieces, I'm using 2/3. Okay, so 2 of the 3 pieces means it's going to be 2/3, and I'm multiplying 2/3 by 10. Now, I mentioned in the learning target that what we're going to do is we're going to take the 10 and we're going to rewrite it over 1. And so by rewriting the fraction over 1, or rewriting the whole number over 1, that tells me that I have 10 wholes. And now I can start working on developing that practice with the algorithm to where I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to rewrite this as 2 times 10 over 3 times 1. And then when I do that, I end up with 2 times 10, which is 20 over 3. And then I need to simplify and reduce it into lowest terms. So 3 is going to go into 20. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it into a mixed number. 3 goes into 20 6 times. And then I look at what I have left over. I end up having 2/3 left over. And then I look and see, can I simplify 2/3 anymore? And the answer is no, I can't simplify 2/3. So my answer is going to be 6 2/3 yards is the amount of ribbon that she is going to use. Okay, so again, what I'd like to point out is I rewrote my whole number over 1, and then I multiply the numerators together, multiply the denominators together, and then simplify to find my answer. Okay, and that is how you can multiply fractions and whole numbers together. So should the answer be less than 5 or greater than 5? How do we know? And so what we can do is we can go ahead and we can use some number sense to help us with this. And so if we look at and compare 1/2. So 1/2 is less than 2/3. And so since 1/2 is less than 2/3, 10 times 2/3, so 10 times 2/3 is going to be greater than 5, because here 1/2 of 10 is going to be 5. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the next page. If we take a look at the next page, it's our first problem that we're going to look at is Hal spent, let me get this going. Hal spent 3/4 of an hour reading each day for 7 days. How much total time did he spend reading? And so what's nice is they went ahead and set up the bar diagram. Each one of the boxes in the bar diagram represents a day, and he spent 3/4 reading each day, and then we're looking for that total hour. So we're going to find 7 times 3/4. And so the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take 7, and I'm going to rewrite it over 1. And I'm going to multiply that by 3/4. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rename. I'm going to go ahead and multiply the numerators together. So I end up with 7 times 3 and then 1 times 4. And when I do 7 times 3, I get 21/4. And so I look at how many times 4 goes into 21. So 4 goes into 21 5 times with 1/4 left over. So the answer that we're going to have is he spent 5 1/4 hours reading. And so you'll notice that in the one-way example, they talk about is just to make sure that you multiply the 7 times the 3 and then write it over 4. That's one way that you can do it. But I really like this visual, just putting the 7 over 1 and then multiplying the denominators together and the numerators together. It will really help you as we continue to move forward with multiplying fractions. It will give you guys that consistency. Okay? So we take a look at your convince me. It says find 6 times 4/9, then use repeated addition to justify your answer. And so if we look at 6 times 4/9, I'm going to do 6 over 1 times 4/9, and then I'm going to multiply. So 6 times 4 is going to be equal to 24 over 9. 9 goes into 24 twice, and then I look at what's left over. So 24, so 9 times 2 is going to be 18. 24 minus 9 is going to be 6 ninths. And then I look to see if I can simplify. And 6 and 9 do have a common denominator. The common denominator, or the common factor that they have, is going to be 3. So I'm going to divide 6 by 3 and 9 by 3. And I end up with 2 and 2 thirds. And so if I use repeated addition to show my answer, what I end up with is I have 4 ninths plus 4 ninths plus 4 ninths. So I'm going to write this 6 times and then add that together, and I end up with 9. And then if I have 6 fours, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I get 24. 24 ninths was equal to 24 ninths. So that's how I know that my answer is going to be correct. All right, so let's move on to the next page. Practice is an example on the top of the previous page. How can finding 1/4 of 7 help you to find 3/4 of 7? And so by finding 1/4 of 7, what we just need to remember is that 3/4. So 3/4 is 3 times 1/4. So that can help us to find what 3/4 of 7 is going to be. Okay. Number 2, if Hal spent 2/3 of an hour reading each day for 7 days, how much time in all did he spend reading? Show how you found your answer. So set up a problem. We're going to do 2/3 times 7 over 1. And I have 14, because 2 times 7 is 14. 3 times 1 is going to be 3. 3 goes into 14 2 times with 2 left over. So he spent 2 2/3 hours reading. Okay. All right, so find each product. Write each product as a mixed number. So I'm going to do 3/8 times 4 over 1. I'm going to show you guys something here that will help you with simplifying when we're working on multiplication, and we'll actually spend some time focusing on this. And if it doesn't make sense to you right now, go ahead and just multiply across and then simplify at the end. But this is a neat little trick to help you guys with your simplification. So it's something that's called cross-canceling. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the diagonals of my values, and I'm going to see if there is a value that I can, or a factor that both numbers have in common. So 3 and 1, they only have 3 in common. Well, 4 and 8, they have 2 in common, and they have 4 in common. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross cancel. So I'm going to divide 4 by 4, and when I do that, I get 1. And then I'm going to divide 8 by 4, and when I do that, I get 2. Now I'm going to multiply. 3 times 1 is going to be 3. 2 times 1 is going to be 2, and so I end up with 1 1/2. Okay, and so if I didn't do it that way, so if I did 3 times 4 over 8 times 1, I would end up with 12/8, which is going to be equal to, 8 goes into 12 one time, and then I have 4/8 left over, which simplifies down to 1 1/2. So I just do the simplifying first by looking at the diagonals and cross-canceling, or dividing by the same factor. And so that's something that if you see it, you can go ahead and do it. If you are like, I don't like doing that, I like simplifying at the end, go ahead and keep simplifying at the end until we get more practice in. Okay, so if we take a look at our next one, we have 8 times 5, 6, and so I'm going to just write 8 over 1. Again, I'm going to keep doing that cross-canceling, keep looking at that. So I look at my diagonals. I have 5 times 1, or 5 and 1. 5 is the common factor. Look at 8 and 6. 8 and 6, they have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide 8 by 2. And when I do that, I get 4. I'm going to divide 6 by 2. And when I do that, I get 3. So 4 times 5 is going to be 20 thirds, which then equals 3 goes into 20 6 times with 2/3 left over. And so again, if I go back and I did 8 times 5 over 1 times 6, and I don't cross cancel, I end up with 46. 6 goes into 46 times with 4 6 left over, and then I have to simplify that down. So I go ahead and I divide by 2, and I end up with 6 2/3. So again, I can simplify, but I can simplify by using cross-canceling as I go, or I can simplify at the end. I find, especially when you're working with larger numbers, that cross-canceling before you start makes it easier to go. All right, last problem we're going to take a look at is we're going to do 5 times, change my color real quick. We're going to do 5 over 1 times 4 sevenths. And look to see if I can cross cancel. 5 and 7, they don't have a common factor other than 1. 4 and 1, they don't have a common factor other than 4. So I can't cross cancel here. So it's just going to be 5 times 4, which is 20. 1 times 7, which is going to be 7. 7 goes into 20 twice with 6 sevenths left over because 20 goes into 7. 7 goes into 20 twice. That's 14. 20 subtract 14. I have 6 left over. So my answer here is going to be 2 and 6 sevenths. Okay. So for your independent practice, the problems that I would like for you to do is I'd like for you to go ahead and do 9 through 16. And then you are going to do problems 19, 21, 23, and 24 in your math practices. Okay.